everybody. Will Brink here. Topic I want to cover is seed oils, which is kind of interesting. It came up on the radar recently because people had sent me some questions about the evils, dangers, toxicity of seed oils, which it kind of threw me off because it's sort of being presented these days. It's almost like a new topic. It's one of these retread topics. It kind of reminds me of fashion. And of course, you're thinking, how could it possibly have any analogy to fashion? It's one of those things where like a generation or so, or 10 years or 20 years goes by and people forget or don't, or grow out of a fashion and don't realize that it's all been done before. And something as ugly as bell bottoms comes back, or, big collars or something. And it's like a topic, quote unquote seed oils, which I'll get to in a minute, which is like an old topic covered, many, many times. And it's like getting passed around by, nutritional gurus or people trying to make a name for themselves or something, is almost like a new topic. And that, so I'm going to give a little background, then I will cover the quote unquote seed oils as to the realities of seed oils and the truth. So are seed oils, toxic, the devil, and to be avoided? So short answer, if you don't want to shoot this video, is no. The answer to that is no. The longer answer, of course, like everything, is a more nuanced and not that simple. There's no good, bad, black, white seed oil type thing. Though I am seeing routinely on Facebook and Twitter, avoid all seed oils, eliminate seed oils from your diet and so forth. And that, of course, is just really bad science. It's bad science. It shows a real poor understanding of the topic. And I have to say, a little annoying that to me that like a bunch of people are picking it up as like this new thing they've discovered, and they're going to push as they're saving you from seed oils. I see some fringing going on in my wrong side. This on my back. I don't know what that's about. I hope it is not too annoying to you all. That's not usually there. So anyway, sorry about that. So let's get down to this. So a little bit of a history. So mid 90s. I was a well-known writer for all the bodybuilding magazines, pre-internet, Muscle Mag, let's see, Muscle Media, Iron Man, Muscular Development, yada, yada, yada. And, in my bread and butter, of course, was writing about supplements and nutrition. And I realized that my knowledge of carbohydrates and proteins was solid. I had a really good functional understanding. But, my understanding of fats was pretty basic. I understood obviously the basic, unsaturated, polyunsaturated, monounsaturated, that kind of thing. I knew I had the basics, but I realized that my knowledge of fat metabolism, chemistry, and all that was not that solid. And so I started to go, do some research. Remember, you couldn't just go Google it. I had to go to the medical libraries, start pulling studies out. Sorry, I got something in my eye here. Okay. And so, this was took a lot of effort. I don't think people realize how amazing the amount of research we have at our fingertips is today, that we can just go online and research stuff. Now, of course, the negative of that is there's a lot of noise to the signal online. That is, is what you're researching accurate? That's a little different issue. So as always, there's a pro and a con to what we've gotten in modern times. But so I really wanted to research my knowledge of fats and start really understanding the different types of fats. Fats are, again, lipids. We would, scientists were going to say lipids, but let's go say fats are a much more complicated topic than, again, certainly we knew then, but even today, it's pretty amazing in 2022 how many people, even with backgrounds in education who should know better, kind of oversimplify lipid metabolism and fats and so forth. So I grabbed a book that was getting good reviews called "Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill" by Dr. Erasmus. And I read the book. I went and looked at a lot of his resources and pulled more studies, and really felt like I had a good handle on it. I contacted Dr. Erasmus, and we wrote an article together in Muscle Mag International, which the thumbnail to this video, which you'll see, is actually a picture of that video. And it was the first article. We introduced basically the concept of flax oil, as a positive fat. This was during sort of like the end of like the low fat, high carb craze, which was, of course, was miserable for health and weight loss, but that's another story. So, in fact, the article was actually rejected by Muscle Media at the time because the editor thought it was crazy talk to actually be recommending fat in the diet for losing fat and health and so forth. Now, I did so after that, Dr. Erasmus, I actually became pretty good friends and did some work together. And I did a lengthy interview with him not that long ago, which I will link below, which we go into all of this. So I'm going to kind of stop here just to sort of, if those who want to go down that rabbit hole and really get into some fun stuff with Dr. Erasmus, and he and I have been friends, for years. So needless to say, my point being, this is really old news here. This is nothing new. I don't completely know why, quote unquote, seed oils, which of course we would have just referred to as vegetable oils, is now being sort of rebranded as seed oils. So this is something I've been researching literally since the mid 90s. This is something Dr. Erasmus has been researching since the 80s, if not before that. And I'm gonna give you the sort of the down and dirty of the realities of what you need to know about the seed oil thing, which is, like I say, kind of old news. So the issue with seed oils is kind of again, it's a bit nuanced. It's not just, again, this avoid them, they're bad for you issue. Issue one, processing. The way that modern seed oils, i.e. vegetable oils, are produced is the negative, is one of the main negatives. They are basically the equivalent of, white sugar and white bread of fat. They've been stripped of all their nutrients and everything of value to them. They have sometimes, of course, depending on how they're processed, of course, you can find trans fats and some really nasty stuff in there. Trans fats, however, again, back 90s and things like margarine and stuff, there was a lot of really nasty, quote unquote, alternatives to saturated fat products that were really nasty. Trans fats, because they have been identified and have been found and pretty much identified as something you really want to avoid. I think more manufacturers have at least, are not producing large, trans fats in their vegetable oils that they put on the shelves. And usually they say trans fat free. I don't believe that's a major issue. But needless to say, the basic seed oils that you see on the shelves of your basic supermarket are definitely to be avoided. They are the basic, equivalent of, like, say, white bread and white sugar or that type of thing in the fat world. And that I agree with. I think that's good recommendation, not new recommendation by any means, but that's a fair recommendation. So having said that, point two of seed oils in general, the majority of seed oils that are sold are very high in omega-6. There's obviously two main categories of lipids we're going to talk about here today, which are, of course, omega-6 and omega-3. And there's a lot more lipids out there than that. But for our conversation, what people are interested in, why seed oils have sort of gotten on the radar as something to avoid, quote unquote, is because they are, most of them, not all of them, but most of them are very high in omega-6, which is linoleic acid, and very low or almost non-existent in omega-3 alpha-linolenic acid. Sorry. And so the reason for that, the reason they tell you to avoid those seed oils, that high omega-6 linoleic acid is associated, and that's a key term, associated with inflammatory, as a basic rule. And this has become a lot less obvious than it was even when I started writing about it. And I'm partly to blame, I have to say, for the sort of overly simplistic view at the time that, omega-6 is pro-inflammatory, omega-3s are anti-inflammatory, the end. And it's not correct. Again, it's a lot more nuanced than that. And I'll get to that in a minute. That is a general rule, a general direction of those fats. And because especially the American diet has a very lopsided intake ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s, they're recommending that you avoid or at least reduce those high omega-6 linoleic acid seed oils from the shelves. Again, that's legit advice. But again, it's really not as clear as that. Now, remember, these studies that were dependent on this, again, these were association or correlation studies. That is, these weren't people fed these fats and found that their inflammatory markers went up. Things like CRP and IL-6 and TNF alpha, those are markers of inflammation. This is not the case. What again, they found that in large epidemiological population studies that higher intakes of omega-6 seed oils were associated with higher levels of CRP and all that. And that, remember, and this is one of the best examples you're ever going to see, in a sense, that correlation does not equal causation. Now, again, back in the day, that's really what we had to work with. And I'm going to link a really good article below that gets a little more into the nuance, so I don't have to get too into the details. But again, be that as it may, it is still good advice. It is still solid advice that our ratio of 6-3 is very, very 6 heavy, and people will get better effects in health, in inflammation, perhaps in improving inflammatory conditions, diseases like colitis and skin diseases and so forth. Even asthma and stuff are associated with inflammatory, will have a better effect by lowering improving the ratio of 6-3. So though that's kind of, that's real advice. Again, it's not quite that simple. For example, the omega-6 lipids actually are not just strictly pro-inflammatory. They can go in various directions, and that is that the omega-6 linoleic can be desaturated into some pro-inflammatory cytokines and such, and it also does produce some anti-inflammatory. It's a much more balanced, nuanced metabolic stream that goes on between. It can go in different directions, and you have to go look at those pathways. But it's not black and white. My sense, and I think the data as time has gone on supports this a bit, that in a omega-3 deficient system, which is very common, those oils will tend to go in that more inflammatory direction. So again, it's not just that omega-6 linoleic high intakes are quote unquote just inflammatory. I think what you're seeing is that due to it being added to an omega-3 deficient system, you're going to see that effect more. So meaning that if one also is to correct again that ratio and add more omega-3s, even without changes in the 6 per se, you're still going to see some reduction in inflammation by doing that. The optimal ratio is not necessarily known. There's different thoughts on that, and again, it might even be dependent somewhat on your existing nutrition. It's certainly going to be somewhat dependent on, are you trying to address, for example, a specific inflammatory condition? Are you talking about general health and so forth? There's not a simple answer here. I think that Dr. Erasmus is probably one of the best sources of people to look to as to what he feels are the best ratios. Now he has a product called Udo's Choice oil, which is a mix of quote unquote seed oils, which is, good for you. And I think it's in a more of a 2-to-1 ratio of 6-3. Again, you're not looking to overdo one of the problems over time is that people have gone a little bit crazy with, again, and I think this is due to bad information of just like avoiding, overdoing the avoidance of 6 and maybe overdoing the 3 in their diet. And again, omega-6s have a role. Now, what we need to talk about a little bit is something called, people have probably heard of this, but if you're not aware, we have to talk about EFAs, which is essential fatty acids. Now, there are 2 essential fatty acids. Now, remember, essential nutrient means something you must get from your diet. It's something you cannot produce on your own. And there are 2 essential fatty acids. And one is linoleic acid, which is omega-6, and the other is alpha-linolenic, which is omega-3. And where are those omega-6 EFAs found? Seed oils, almost exclusively. So completely going out of your way to avoid all seed oils, even omega-6 seed oils, is nonsensical. It doesn't make any sense. Yes, most people ingest too many of them, omega-6 and the fats. Yes, highly processed seed oils should be avoided, but unprocessed seed oils that have a proper ratio, of which there are a number of them, are very healthy. They're not to be avoided. They should be added to the diet. I take flax oil, or I take Udo's Choice oil, or sometimes I kind of mix my own variety of various unprocessed. And a lot of these seed oils do again contain phytonutrients, antioxidants, and a number of beneficial compounds in them, separate from those oils. So you have to you got to it's a little more nuanced. You've got to do a little research. There is anybody that's out there telling you to just all seed oils, avoid seed oils, from your diet, have no idea what they're talking about. That's just the bottom line. There is not a new topic. There's nothing new under the sun here, frankly. There's people that are trying to retread this one to sound, like authorities, on this. So yeah, avoid basic, supermarket shelf seed oils, and there's a list of the ones to avoid. I'm not going to go down the list. Soy oil, safflower, sorry, and so forth. But the list is not hard to find. Basically, you want to focus your fat intake, your lipid intake on unprocessed, healthy seed oils. You want to, of course, have a source of monounsaturated, i.e., high quality olive oil, avocado oil. You should get some fish oils in there, or quote unquote EPA, DHA, which are called fish oils, but they're not necessarily always from fish. There are vegan sources. There's a whole other talk we could have about, for example, the EFAs, and whether, for example, as we get older, we become less efficient in converting those and desaturating and elongating those fats into the more active lipids. There's even some people, some scientists that really feel that the EFAs should actually be EPA and DHA versus alpha linolenic and linoleic. It should be the next one down the pike, because that's actually what we lack. The rate of desaturation, taking those parent oils, parent lipids, and desaturating into the active metabolites, is actually quite poor. Another issue is that they compete for the same enzymes. That is, what happens is you have, and this is one of my thoughts again, when I'm talking about when you have an omega-3 deficient system, which is a large body of people, and you're putting in a lot of these omega-6, and there's very little enzymatic activity left for what little omega-3s you're getting, and you're pushing these pro-inflammatory pathways. But what happens is they compete for the same enzymes. And so the body does have preference for one over the other. And so what happens if you're overdoing, you're eating too much of one of them, you start to compete, you start to not get these desaturated products through these enzymes. And I don't want to get too, I'm trying not to get too into the science here of talking about the various delta desaturase enzymes. It goes, so basically they get desaturated and elongated, and you start to get all these really interesting prostaglandins and cytokines and so forth. It's a really complex system. It's a really interesting system, and it is not a fully elucidated system. To this day, they are still discovering. So anybody thinks, again, everything is known about this topic, and we know it all. We actually don't. And it's not. There are still products and desaturated products and elongated products and cytokines and prostaglandins and so forth that are being, if not discovered, certainly have not been researched as to what they do, how they do it, their pros and their cons. There's a lot of stuff going on. Lipid metabolism is a very complicated metabolism. It is very interesting, and it is ongoing. So don't let anybody, again, if anybody gets on their YouTube channel or their podcast or their, on TV and sounds like they are the end all be all authority on understanding this topic, they are either delusional or they are have an ego problem, or they're lying. As a fact. And I've been looking, like I say, I've been researching this topic a long time, and I do keep up with the literature, especially, honestly, I hate to, it's like we can't have any videos or talks about somehow the word COVID not coming in there. But I'm going to throw that in there only because, remember, a lot of those inflammatory products, that hyperinflammation that leads to the damage from COVID, are from some of these desaturated products, again, cytokines and so forth, that come from lipid metabolism. And which is which, again, you got to go look at them. But there is, of course, good data and good information that people like people with obesity, people that are type 2 diabetics and so forth, that are at higher risk, of course, of complications, because they are more inflamed. They have higher inflammatory markers, and they are producing more of these pro-inflammatory products. Not all of which come from lipids, but again, it gets complicated fast. But just to give you an idea, it still even applies even within, I mean, the pro-inflammatory products that come out of this omega-6, omega-3 ratio that we're talking about applies to just about every disease state, either directly or indirectly. So it's a really interesting topic, and one, like I said, I've been trying to keep on. So I hope that answers the question. I will link a good article below that really goes into this sort of discussion of more subtlety, sort of separating out, the good, quote unquote, good fat, bad fat, which is anytime you start saying, good, bad, black, white, you're almost invariably wrong, whether it's nutrition, whether it's, politics, it doesn't matter. If you start going down that rabbit hole of polarized black and white, good, bad thinking, you're usually wrong. And that is true of fats and lipids. And I will take some blame early on. I will take some blame for that early on in the 90s, where the articles I wrote for the major magazines, which were the first of their kind, kind of were maybe a little overly simplistic. But my excuses were talking the 90s, and what we knew of fats at that time was fairly simplistic. And so, we painted this picture of sort of, again, omega-6 lipids, quote unquote, inflammatory, omega-3 anti-inflammatory, not that simple. So I will post a really good article on that below that will parse out some of this for you with sources. I will post a link to the discussion I had with Dr. Erasmus, if you want to kind of really get into this a little more and have some fun with listening to the two of us go back in time a bit. And I hope that answers your questions on seed oils, the reality of seed oils in a nutshell. If you have some questions, you can leave them below the vid, and I'll do my best to answer them. And hopefully that fringing thing under the corner wasn't too awful. I'll figure that out. But green screen has gotten a lot better than it used to, but it's still a challenge. So this, of course, video, like, please, sub up to the channel. And this, of course, was brought to you by Alpha Joe Coffee Booster. Tastes good, feels good, good for you. I call that the trifecta of win. And I'll see you guys on the brink soon.